I failed the coding interview. I mean, this one feels like it's very close to home, and I'm very, very excited about this. By the way, I work at Netflix, by the way. Not a big deal. Not a big deal.
A year ago, I interviewed at Netflix and absolutely embarrassed myself, which obviously led to a rejection. But a lot of you guys wanted to hear about that, so let's talk about it. Now, even though I didn't get the job, I hope my experience can teach you guys on what not to do. I learned a lot from it, and I performed better on my other interviews after that, and I hope it helps you guys out too. Now,
So I've said this like 1,000 times, and I'm going to say it again. Don't interview at the place you want. Interview at a bunch of places you don't care about. And then when you feel super confident on the interviewing game, then go and try to interview at the places you want. Because now you know what you're doing, right? Because, hey, you don't want to work at Initech, okay? No one's excited about Initech. So you go to Initech and you go through their interview process and you learn how to crush an interview. Then after you get done with Initech and you're like, this is how you crush an interview, then you go to Netflix. How do I interview at places I don't want? You start applying to places you don't care if you get the job or not. It genuinely helps because there's like a whole set of jitters that you're going to get. There's ways that your brain's going to just turn off the first time you stand in front of a whiteboard or you talk to somebody about one of your experiences. But then you're going to learn that people just ask generally the same questions. Yeah, there's going to be probably some tricky DSA question, but hey, learn your basic data structures. You're going to get through most of it, right? If you don't do that, it's just going to be hard. Right? It's just going to be hard. This only works if you get an interview, by the way. Yes, you have to be able to get interviews. And obviously, that's a bit more tricky. When you're starting off, you don't really get a lot of these options. If you're just starting off and you've been going to a university, go to a career fair. Interview at every place. Oh, you don't want to work at SeaTac, Underwater Warfare in Seattle? Well, guess what? Go interview there, all right? Interview as the bestest you possibly can interview because it's going to give you experience. It's going to give you good experience.
the first thing you guys probably want to know is, how did someone like you even get to interview with Netflix? Well, the answer to that question is, I don't know.
This is actually the truest statement of all time. Real talk. Why do some companies reach out? What and how does these intersections happen? Honestly, real talk. I am of the firm belief that 2 days before I got a message sent out to me, I changed my skills on LinkedIn. And I think during this time, 10 years ago, skills were like a highway in which they popped up people's candidates. And why I changed my skills was very, very simple. When I first started out on LinkedIn, I thought the site was stupid. So I put cage fighting as my skill. Then everybody started endorsing me because it was funny. After I got hundreds upon hundreds of endorsements for cage fighting, I realized people are going to think I'm a cage fighter. Maybe I should change what my skill set is on LinkedIn. Therefore, I went and changed it to mustache analysis. And within 2 days, I got an interview request for Netflix. Was it right? Was it wrong? Did it actually lead to me because I changed my skill set and people started endorsing that I started showing up in more search results? I don't know what happened. I don't know the LinkedIn algorithm. I don't know the LinkedIn algorithm back then, but that's just what happened. Okay? Moral of the story, cage fighter. Yeah, I know the fact that I changed my profile showed up that I was active. I thought it was RxJS. Yeah, at the end, they said they're looking for people with RxJS skills, but why did I show up on the search to begin with? My guess is because I was making changes to my profile. And then that's what led it down the entire road.
What do you mean by that?
I honestly don't know how I got an interview. I think it was just all luck. Netflix is a big company, so they probably let a lot of people interview. But the way it started was like all jobs. I just applied online. I applied for the new grad position since I was in my last year of college at the time. I didn't have a referral in my application.
Nice.
I just filled it out and called it a day. And surprisingly, only 1 day passed and I get an email. Next steps with Netflix.
Ugh.
What a fucking surprise. When I applied, I did it as a joke because in my mind, I was like, yeah, Netflix is gonna interview me. That's funny. You got the whole squad laughing. The company that only hired senior engineers at this point is going to interview some average bozo like me.
So what he doesn't realize is that Netflix has changed their mind completely on this in the last 6 to 8 months or a year. 2 years ago, we started interviewing new grads and all that, and now we actually have a whole level system and everything now, completely different than how it used to be. So yeah, Guess what? Joke's on you. Of course they're going to interview you, okay? Got to keep up with the times. You got to read those news articles. You got to read those Medium articles. That is how Trash Dev got hired. Trash Dev specifically got hired because they decided they're going to start letting junior engineers leak. Shit. They're going to start letting junior engineers work at Netflix. I got to quit reading chat because y'all just saying crazy things.
That's hilarious. Now, if you don't know how the software engineer interview process goes for a lot of companies, it usually goes like this. The first step is the initial application, so you just send your resume, blah, blah, blah. The second step is an online assessment, which is just a coding test on a platform similar to LeetCode.
We do Code Signal. So we do Code Signal. I kid you not. Okay, so I had this interview, gosh, it was months ago. And I had this interview, so I was just like, hey, Tell me about yourself. What have you been working on? They're like, oh, la, 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 la. And I'm like, okay, very fantastic. Hey, are you more familiar with promises or callbacks in JavaScript? And they're like, well, I don't really do a lot of TypeScript. I'm not super, I'm a Python person, and obviously red flags right there. But I was like, oh, okay, so would you be probably a little bit better with callbacks? And they're like, absolutely. And I'm like, okay, fantastic. So what do? I go through, I redesign the experiment or like my little coding challenge to be a callback challenge as opposed to a promise challenge. Trying to be really nice to them, give them the greatest possible chance to succeed. And when I do that, they're like, I'm really just not all that familiar, but okay, here. And then all of a sudden I see the whole screen flash like it's been highlighted. And I'm like, that was strange. And then I see this in the camera. So I'm like, what you thinking about? And they're like, oh, just how to solve this problem. So how do you think you should solve it? Oh, I got an idea how to solve it. And then all of a sudden, it was like it was like a monotone typing. Just was like going on the screen. And I'm sitting there going, huh. And then what gave it all away, besides for the while typing, doing this, right? Very strange thing to do while typing, by the way, is that during that thing, sorry, this is Go, but you'll get the idea. There was a queue, and the person went like this. Next equals, a Q dot shift bang that. And they're like, I have no experience with TypeScript. If you're going to bang an array operation with TypeScript to coerce a non-null value, you cannot tell me that you don't know JavaScript, okay? Or you don't know TypeScript. Oh, I had no idea, right? I was just like, bullshit. This is just I was already down. I was pressing X hard. But the fact that you just slapped it in there must have been the gaming chair, dude. It was so much bullshit.
From then, if you do good...
By the way, I've been ChatGPT'd like 7 times. Y'all, if you are interviewing, don't use ChatGPT, you stupid individual, okay? First off, you can't communicate your solution because now you're reading code you don't understand about a problem. Second off, it's completely disingenuous, okay? You're going to still have to go and interview with people. You're still going to have to stand in front of a whiteboard. You're probably still going to have some other kind of questions, and you're going to utterly fail at it. Don't do it. Be smarter. Be smarter than that.
On that, you move on to a phone screen, and this is usually a technical coding interview where you'll solve some question with an engineer at the company. And if you do good on the phone screen, you'll move on to what's called the on-site interview.
Yeah.
This usually consists of...
You should communicate the phone screen. Communicate. If you just start typing at a speed in which people never solve problems at, which is super monotonic, and then on top of it, you can't explain what you're doing. And then when I ask you to walk me through your code, you're like, you think I want to hire that?
Multiple interviews, and it could be one or multiple coding interviews, a system design interview, and then a behavioral interview. And if you pass all of those, you get the job. Pretty easy, right?
No.
Now, before some of you guys freak out and are
Wait
like,
for Netflix.
oh my God,
Netflix
how am I going to get a job
different.
or an internship? The process seems so difficult. How am I going to do this? Or the smart people that are like, well, not every company does it like this. Some of them have it really... Or the smart people that are like, oh my God, how am I going to get...
ChatGPT just makes terrifying images. Even this thing becomes uncanny, right? Like, what is going on here? This poor sloth is like a pile of just slinky sloth, All right? Look at this poor one. What happened to it? It just has legs coming out of everywhere. It's just legs. You can't even see it. There's just look at all those legs. There's just legs everywhere. Okay? It's terrifying. I hate uncanny valley of all this stuff.
The job or an internship, the process seems so difficult. How am I going to do this? Or the smart people that are like, well, not every company does it like this. Some of them have it really easy. Well, you're right. The interview process all depends on the company.
Yep.
Some companies have it easier. Some companies have it harder. It really just all depends.
Netflix is much heavier.
For Netflix, at least for the new grad position, which I applied for, it went like this. The first step was the application, which I just did. The second step is an online assessment. The third step is a phone screen with a Netflix engineer. And then the last part.
The weird part's the online assessment. I've never done that. So usually we've just done a phone screen that uses Code Signal. That's like an online assessment, right? I've never this like the 2-part one. I don't know that. That must be a new grad specific one. I've never done that.
Is the on-site.
And I've done a lot of new grad interviewing. Oh, okay.
Which was 3 interviews. A coding interview, a system design interview, and then a behavior interview.
Yep.
The email I got was for the online assessment. And I think it was just an automatic response to weed out applicants before they actually check resumes. I had a few days to prepare before it expired, so I spent some time doing some LeetCode questions before attempting the assessment.
Good job.
The assessment was done on a platform called Code Signal, and the questions were very similar to what you see on LeetCode. The coding assessment had 4 questions that felt like LeetCode easies and mediums. I only solved 3 of the questions. A question about matrices fucked me up, but I thought that was it because I've seen some posts online, Reddit posts where people literally get a perfect score and get rejected. So I was like, well, whatever. Wasn't expecting much anyway.
Not on Netflix. We technically, we value very high technical solving ability, but we're also pretty good at recognizing that a 45-minute interview on doing LeetCode isn't necessarily the greatest indicator as to technical acumen. You know what I mean? It's a good place. It's a good place.
Netflix would not want me. So a few weeks passed and I was just in bed scrolling on TikTok, being lazy, being a degenerate. And I get an email from a Netflix recruiter saying, hello from Netflix, next steps. I cannot believe the email. I was in complete shock and disbelief. Now at this point, in my opinion, I've officially moved on to the interview process because they checked my resume. I've done the online assessment to weed out people when I passed. And now you guys are probably wondering, well, what did your resume look like to move on? Well, in my opinion, my resume wasn't that impressive. I had 2 small internships that weren't that impressive, at least to a big company like Netflix, and the personal.
Actually, see that first off, that is very impressive to any company, right? You're in school, you're in your final year, and you've already had 3-month internships for multiple times, right? There's a lot of stuff you learn in 3 months that are just super annoying, right? Everyone's first 3 months is just a super annoying stuff. You know what I mean?
Projects I had at the time were very simple YouTube tutorial type of projects. All of them were web development projects. None of it was really unique. I didn't stand out too much. I think the projects I had were a social media clone, a blog website, and then a simple crypto website where I just fetched data from an API. I also didn't go to some fancy prestigious school like Harvard, MIT, or UCLA. I went to an average state school. Like when I applied to jobs and I
have Montana State University. That's where I went. A lot of grace is given to new ads. Yeah, one thing I also really enjoy is that I am very happy that people don't, that where you went to school is starting to matter less. Like, honestly, college and university is what you make it. You can go to a shitty school and you can have an incredible experience. You can go to an incredible school and be a complete dumbass coming out of it. How does someone handle moving from to California for Netflix if you've lived on the East Coast? The same way you did it for me. I love Star. You have to take. I disagree. You have to be able to take risks, right? You have to be able to take risks. All risks are taken. It's just a part of life. You have to be willing to do something that maybe is uncomfortable, unusual, difficult. Like I said, one of the hardest decisions I've ever personally made in my life is moving to California from Montana. When my wife was 9 months pregnant, we literally arrived there the day she could not travel any further with no doctor, no friends, and no house trying to work at Netflix. Was it easy? No. Were we nervous? Yes. Was it difficult? Yes. Was I scared? Absolutely. But was I able, but did we do it? Yeah. Like, you just gotta, take a risk. You're not gonna, moving from the East Coast to California is not a risk, right? It's a risk, but it's not a risk. You know what I mean? Like, there's real risks you can have in your life. That one's more like if you mess up and things go south, you have to figure out how to get your ass back home, and it kind of sucks, and it's totally shitty. Like, I get that. Just like for me, too. It'd be totally shitty. I'd have to go figure out all that crap with a newborn. It's totally awful, but it's not like all of a sudden, it's not like I'm risking my life or anything like truly difficult. It's just, it is what it is, Second off, someone said, "Oh, I disagree. Some universities have better opportunity than others." Sure, there are. I never said that there are universities better or worse. I simply said universities are what you make it. You get to determine how much information you want out of a university. If you go to a shitty university, you can still, like, I went to Montana State University. There's nothing like prestigious. People aren't writing blog posts about how incredible Montana State University is. But guess what? I made the most out of it. I went to every career fair. I learned everything about it. I read every single book from front cover to back cover. I was the kid that set the curve in every single one of my classes. There was the real differences in your professors. One of my professors, I could not understand. His Chinese accent was so thick, I could not understand him. Even towards the end of my time at university, after being there for 4 years, I could not actually talk to him, okay? It was too hard. Like, it was so difficult. It was so difficult. And guess what? Guess what? I just read the book, and I was his most accomplished student by simply reading the book and just doing that. You know what I mean? I think that you can kind of choose your hard. You can choose what you want to get out of it. You get 4 years. Figure it out. It was hard. It sucked. It's not like I loved it. Anyways.
Had to enter my school. Sometimes it wouldn't show up as an option, and I had to select other. So yeah, I have no idea how I moved on. Now I was at the phone screen stage, where I have to do an interview with a Netflix engineer. So I set up the time for the interview and started the LeetCode grind. I was on my fucking David Goggins type of grinding. I was eating LeetCode for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I was fucking overdosing on LeetCode. LeetCode was running through my veins. I dreamed about LeetCode, had nightmares about LeetCode. It was serious. You could put me on a motivational video. Now I'm being dramatic here, but I think I did around 50 to 75 LeetCode problems from when I got the email to the day of the interview.
I should do a stream where I do LeetCode problems. I haven't done that in a long time. I think that'd be a lot of fun. You don't want me as your hero, by the way. I'm not a great hero.
I couldn't do much preparation because remember how I mentioned I had 2 small internships on my resume? Well, I was in the middle of that second internship, and I also had class. We could race again. And at the time, I was taking computer vision and machine learning. Yeah. And if you've seen the math in those classes,
it's so hard. Dude, like when you do real machine learning classes, and you're doing like particle swarm optimizations and ant colony optimizations, and you're proving evolutionary algorithms and all that kind of crap, and you're doing, what's it called? The error back propagation calculations. It's hard, right? Like I had to write a bunch of neural nets by hand, and I have a library up on GitHub still to this day where I have, an MLPs, RBFs, ant fizzes, ant colonies, particle swarm, evolutionary stuff. It was hard.
It's not something I could just skip on. I probably would have failed those classes if I didn't pay attention. But fast forward to the day of the interview. I was so fucking nervous. I didn't have much interview experience, and the thought of interviewing with a company like Netflix made it 100 times worse. Yeah. I was sweating, couldn't focus. It was just bad, man. Yeah. But the interview got started. The interview was done online, so I was in a Zoom call with an engineer, and we used CodeSignal as the platform to write my code. The interview started by introducing ourselves, asked me about my experience, my projects and all that, and I think I was fumbling my words a bit too since I was so nervous. But after that, they asked the coding question. The question was something you'd expect from LeetCode, and the most surprising thing about the question was that it was similar to one I've done on LeetCode. So in my head, I was just like, thank fucking God, I won't embarrass myself at least. So I started off by explaining what I thought the problem was asking. The interviewer agreed and said I was on the right track. Cool. Then I started to explain my approach for the problem, and the interviewer was once again agreeing with me.
By the way, this is all good approach. Hopefully everyone's kind of understanding, which is prove that you understand the problem, State how you're going to solve it. Don't get wax eloquent with your words and try to be a dummy about it. Just be quick with it. You don't even need to talk about running time. You don't need to talk about any of this crap. Just be able to go like this. I'd do this. I'd use a hash map. Always just say you're going to use a hash map or priority queue, okay? It's always the same question. Priority queue, hash map. Every single time, do that. Add the word sort at the end. Boom. You've pretty much covered like 99% of all problems. You're good to go.
I mean that I was on the right track, and I was treating it like a pair programming session since that's what they said. But I think it's bullshit for some companies because some of these interviews, I swear they just want you to solve the problem. Anyways, I explained my approach, and now it was time to cut it up.
You just said hash map.
Here's where the problems start, and my nerves completely took over. You ever had that moment in school when you're doing an exam or a quiz, and once it starts, you just forget literally everything you learned? Yeah, that happened to me during this interview. Now,
so one thing I will say about this is that if you come across a problem and you feel like you really know it, and then it's time to start coding, and then you feel like you can't do it, and it's very scary and all these kind of things, it's very, very simple to break this. First, stop trying to memorize a solution, right? Drop everything out of your head and then start one at a time, right? Like, you just have to do that. People always forget this thing, which is very, very simple, and I've said this to a lot of people because I've always been asked, why don't you get any sort of test anxiety? I come in with a very, very simple answer. I already know what I know, right? Like, so when I walk into that test, I've studied, I know the problems, that's that. I'm going to be presented a problem. I'm going to walk through every single thing I know one at a time when I get presented a problem. Oh, how do you do whatever this thing should be? Okay, first off, can I put it in an array? Okay, if I put it in an array, and I sort it, what do I get out of it? Okay, maybe no, nothing, okay. What about a dictionary? Can I count each value? Okay, I could count each value, right? Like, you just have to walk through things one at a time. You don't try to go to the first bestest solution. Just walk through what you know, because if you just go through what you know, you're gonna get to the solution. You know nothing, Jon Snow. You know nothing, right? And don't forget, it's better to ask for help and get somewhere than just sit there blankly and say, sorry, I need to take a step back. Let's start from the beginning. Exactly. Communicate what you're doing. You can even state, holy cow, I felt like this problem was super simple, but I've just got extremely nervous and I feel like I've forgotten everything. So I'm actually going to re-go through this and walk through everything that I know, and we're going to go one at a time through this, okay? Right? Like, totally reasonable to do. Would you accept an n-squared solution? I wouldn't care if it was an n-squared solution. I'd want you to explain it, and then I'd talk about how can we make it faster. If making it faster is what I want to see right here, I just want to see, like, me personally, when I go through these kind of things, I want to see that you are a basic, competent coder. You know what I mean? I want to make sure you just know how to code, that you've done it enough that you're not fumbling and goofing around, that you're like, how do you join a string, right? Like, if you use a language, you should know how to join the string, okay? That's all there is to it. If you don't know how to join your strings, if you don't know how to split your strings, if you don't know how to find something in a string, if you don't know how to do your most basic problems in a language you say you're familiar with, then I have high doubts about it, right? Like, really, that's for me, like, it's not that bad. You could do it. You could do it.
Even though I explained my approach, asked some questions, I just completely forgot how to code. The nerves won. My solution started with a hash map, and I chose Python as my language for the interview because I'm a soy dev and I want it really easy.
Let's go! Let's go! Oh, yeah!
And in order to make a hash map in Python, you tend to use a dictionary or a dic. The problem was I forgot how to use a dictionary.
You know, a lot of men forget how to use the dick, okay? It like, with age, as time starts going on, you forget about it, but don't ever forget that one simply does not measure their dick in bytes, okay? It's just something you don't do. You literally never do that. And even if you do try to do that, Stack Overflow will write you a handcrafted moderator response saying that, hey, sorry, your question clearly has double entendres in it, and you're not allowed to measure your dick. And then you'll never know how big your dick is. Okay, sure, you take a two-hand approach to this dick measuring. Well, guess what? You're still not precise.
dictionary. So I basically forgot how to use my dick. You know, it happens to every developer's life where you just forget how to use your dick. Very unfortunate. So I ended up stumbling on the most basic things with a dictionary. And look at it from the interviewer's point of view, right? The person you're interviewing is someone who's done a few years of coding classes, since it's a new grad position, right? They've passed the online assessment. Their resume was good enough to make it here, but you're telling me they can't do a simple for loop. How the did they get here? Now, unfortunately, I spent all my time stumbling on the solution, and then the interview ended just like that. I just knew that was it. It was just embarrassing, man. And the interviewer was nice and was just like, it's all right, man. Don't worry about it. It happens to a lot of people. And that was it. The worst part about it was that literally the moment the interview ended, I decided to finish implementing my solution with the same test case that I was given. And I kid you not, in about 5 minutes, I coded it up without any issues. It's like all the knowledge came seeping into my head, and I was so mad. Now, a few days passed, and I was just disappointed with myself. Like, how could I mess up the easiest interview I probably could have ever gotten for Netflix? I solved a similar question, my approach was correct. How could I just forget how to code? But I get an email from the Netflix recruiter, and the email says, congratulations, you're moving on to the next steps. And I was so fucking excited. I was so happy. It was crazy, man. Nah, I'm just kidding. I just got a rejection letter, obviously. You thought it was going to be a happy ending. I'm not the main character here. I was just a side character who finally died for the plot. And even if I did move on, I would have had to do a system design interview. And if I did that interview, I probably would have gotten banned from ever applying to Netflix again. I never studied anything about system design, so I had no idea what to do there. So I probably got saved from embarrassing myself even more. Now, while in the interview guide I got from Netflix, they said they care about your problem solving, but at the end of the day, it's a coding test. If you can't code it, why should you pass? Now, after this interview,
I do want to re-emphasize again. If you say you know a language and you go in there and you can't write a for loop because you're trying to go so damn fast to be impressive, you're going to be depressive, okay? Remember, it's not about speed. Calm down, do the things you know. You've literally written a for loop 10,000 times, okay? By the way, something that's very, very good to do. This is probably my best piece of advice I can give you. Before you go into a phone coding interview, turn off your LSP, turn off Copilot, turn off everything, and just simply start writing code and just keep on doing that for a little bit, right? Because when you do that, you're going to have some of the best, like, kind of experience and going, oh, yeah, okay, yeah. And it'll just really stick into your brain. And then guess what? You'll come out the other side. And when you go and you get into it, it will be fantastic. You'll do actually a really good job. And you're not going to have this mess up because guess what? You're going to go into an editor you've never used. You're going to go use it with a color scheme you've never used. You're going to have somebody talking to you, asking you questions. You're going to be in this completely foreign environment that you're just totally not used to. So at least go and train in an environment that gives you nothing. So that way, when there is a little bit of IntelliSense, you're using Code Signal. You got a little bit of IntelliSense. Okay, awesome, easy. I could do that, right? You kind of do a little bit of those things. That just makes things just a little bit, makes it a little bit, easy. Are you saying train at gravity 100x gravity? Exactly.
Even though it was a fail, I definitely learned a lot. I learned how to control my nerves better, make sure I knew my coding fundamentals, and improved how I managed my time during the interview.
Again, interview at places, like if you get an interview with a company you really like and you're super excited about it, try to push out the interview a little bit and just try to get an interview anywhere else. Just go through it once. You know what I mean? Go through it once.
So here's my advice for you guys so that it doesn't happen to you too. Don't let your nerves take over. I know it's really hard, but really try your best. Don't spend a majority of your time just talking about the solution. They're here to see you code. Now, it's perfectly fine to talk while you're coding since it helps the interviewer see your
Completely agree. Completely agree with everything that he said. Everything. was perfect. It was perfect. It was perfect. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing is it's these things really aren't all that hard. You know what I mean? Like, these things aren't really all that bad. You got to just take a moment. Like, so much of it is trying not to go faster than you normally go. You know what I mean? Oh, yeah, I'm going to put a like on that. People just try to go so damn fast, right? They try to go so fast and be impressive. Just work at the level you're used to working at. You know what I mean? Don't do something out of the ordinary. You need to know how to use your dick to get into Netflix. Exactly. I tried to go fast in a code review for a security job. Legit forgot how to count to 5. Exactly. When you try to be impressive, you won't be impressive. Just be exactly what you're good at. You know what I mean? Do exactly what you're good at, and that is it. That's it. You know, people always try to go. You try to. It's like you try to show a side of yourself that doesn't exist. Never gonna work out. It's just never gonna work out. All right, hey, like and subscribe. Hey, go check out Coding Sloth. This was fantastic, by the way. Coding Sloth was great. Like and subscribe on Coding Sloth. Go check him out. Good videos. Good guy. Fantastic. Let's go. Let's go. Great editing. Great storytelling. Felt like everything about that was absolutely fantastic.